Welcome to release 5 of my Rhythmic knit along. This week is our first week of Intarsia knitting and we'll be starting with the tempo square, and this is inspired by my love of vinyl music and creating these sort of elongated spinning disc shapes like when you're looking at vinyl spinning on a record player. So we're going to learn a few tips and techniques and the basics of Intarsia knitting this week. So some tips and techniques we will be learning are how to read an Intarsia chart, how to wind bobbins or butterflies so it's less stressful when you're knitting two colours on a row. We'll also be learning how to estimate those yarns so you're not always sewing in ends. And finally we'll be learning how to join in new shades when knitting with Intarsia. In release 5 we're working from an Intarsia chart. To read an Intarsia chart we can see from the written pattern that we're going to cast on 32 stitches, which is along the bottom here. Along the side we can see that we're working 40 rows. Each knit stitch is worked in one of these small squares, and this is shown in the chart here what yarns are needed to use. So we have two keys here, which is the blanket key and the cushion key, as we're going to be using different shades if you're knitting the blanket or the cushion. So for the blanket we can see we're using yarns A, E and F. A is the background colour and that is the blank squares. E is the thicker dot and F are the triangles. For the cushion key we're working A, B and C. So for the cushion, again, A is the blank background, B are the dots and C are the triangles up here. So we're going to be working straight, so we'll be reading our right side rows from right to left, and the second row will be our wrong side row and we'll be reading that left to right. To follow you can again use highlighter tape, so you just can buy this in stationery shops and it's a great way to follow your chart, stick it down, peel it and place it up to your next row. Or you can just tick your work off or use a piece of paper. When working Intarsia, a great way to stop your yarns getting tangled at the back of your work is working with bobbins and butterflies. Bobbins are something you can buy in a yarn shop or online, and all you need to do is wrap your yarn around your bobbin and then when you cut it, when you're working or knitting, you have these at the back of your work and it stops them twisting. You can also make your own using butterflies, and I'll demonstrate how to use that now. So again, it works the same way as a bobbin, so at the back of your work it just stops balls of yarn getting tangled on the floor. It's a nice stress-free way to do Intarsia knitting. So to work out how much yarn we need for each butterfly, we'll be needing the chart, one needle, and the yarn you'll be using to wind that butterfly. So if we're looking at these triangle shapes here, which is in blanket key yarn F and in the cushion key yarn C, we're going to work out how many stitches we need at the widest point and how many rows we need at the widest point. So I can see from here that we need 19 stitches at the widest point and the rows are 18 rows. So to work out the stitches we need per row, we're going to wrap this yarn round our needle 19 times. So I'm going to leave a bit of a tail at the end and that's going to just be a bit of excess. And then I'm going to wrap it around our needle 19 times, so that's once and that creates one stitch. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. So if I pinch the yarn there and then take it off the needle, I know roughly per row that this is the quantity that we need. So now we want to multiply that by 18 rows. So what we're going to do is work out how much of this we need 18 times. To do that, we're just going to go and fold it 18 times. So that is 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on like this until you've done that 18 times with a little bit extra yarn at the end, and that's how you'll know roughly how much yarn you'll need for each shape. Now that we've measured how much yarn we'll need for each butterfly, we can start winding them. To do that, we're going to wrap the yarn around our fingers and make a figure 8. So what we'll do is grab one end of the yarn and leave a bit of a tail and pinch that between your index finger and your middle finger and leave that there. Now we're going to wrap the yarn on the inside of the thumb, round to the outside of the thumb, the inside of the little finger to the outside of the little finger. So the inside of the thumb to the outside of the thumb, inside of the little finger to the outside. And repeat that to form your figure 8. And keep repeating this until we have a little bit of yarn left, which we're going to wrap around the middle. So if you keep repeating the same way to form your figure 8. And now once we've got a little bit of yarn left, we are going to leave that. We're going to, with our finger, pinch tightly and don't let that unravel, but pull that off your fingers, leaving that yarn at the beginning just to the side. And now with the yarn that we've left at the end, we're just going to wrap that round the centre of the yarn to tighten it and secure it in place. I like to keep my thumb under it whilst I wrap it, and that just allows you to have a bit of room to tuck the yarn underneath when we secure it. So when you have a little bit of yarn left, just tuck that where your thumb is. And that's now secure, and we have our butterfly ready to start our Intarsia. To cast on for Intarsia, you can cast on 32 stitches using yarn E or B. As we're knitting a blanket and cushion and the sides will be seamed, you're going to lose the cast on edge, so it won't matter if it's a different colour here and it's the darker grey because you won't see it. For this sample, you can also, like I have, cast on 12 stitches in yarn A and 20 stitches in yarn E or B. This just helps join the yarns at the beginning, but we can also join the yarns on the first row. I've knitted part of this swatch here already. You can see it in the chart where it's represented. Now I will demonstrate how we're going to twist our yarns in Intarsia so we create this nice join here. To do this, I'm going to first, using my yarn E or B, knit 27 stitches. So the black dots here are my yarn E or B, so I'm going to knit this row to 27 stitches. Now that I've knit my 27 stitches using yarn E or B, I'm going to introduce my yarn A. So to do that, the yarn we're working with, which is this grey yarn here, I'm just going to place over the top of the new yarn. So my old yarn places over the top, and from underneath I'm going to pick up this new yarn. And now I'm going to knit to the end of the pattern. So now I have twisted my needles, and to make sure it's nice and neat and you don't have any loose stitches, you can just give that old yarn a nice tug at the back, just to keep your tension correct and nice and neat. And now we continue knitting in our yarn A till the end of the row. Now we're going to turn our work so the back is facing us, and our next row is a wrong side facing row, so we'll be purling all of our stitches. So now I'm going to purl 5 stitches using yarn A, and then I'll change my yarns. So if I purl my stitches, I'm now going to place that working yarn that I'm using over the top of the new yarn that I'm going to pick up and now knit with. And now I'm going to purl to the end in this yarn. And like we did at the first row with the old yarn you can just pull tightly there to make sure your tension is nice and neat. We can see on our next row now on the chart that we're going to move along one stitch with the colours. So I'll just demonstrate now how to do that. So when we're working across in our yarn E or B, I'll knit one less stitch than before, and we'll work exactly the same as we have been. So I'm just going to, the working yarn, place over the top, and the new yarn pick up from underneath the work. And now I'll continue knitting in yarn A, which is my new yarn. Again, giving a little pull at the back of that yarn to keep it nice and neat. And that's how you move along the stitches in Intarsia. I hope you enjoy making your first Intarsia square. Don't forget to share your progress in our own Connect Make Along group on Facebook. See you next time!